My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 32 I thought I knew my place in my family's hierarchy. For 3 decades I watched my younger brother Jake receive everything: the brand new cars at 16, the Ivy League education, the endless financial support for his failed business ventures. I was the forgotten daughter, the one who worked 2 jobs through community college while he got Harvard handed to him on a silver platter. But when he discovered I had $28 million sitting in my investment accounts, his entitled rage revealed a family conspiracy that shattered everything I believed about blood loyalty and the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Hey everyone, before we dive into this wild family drama that'll have you questioning everything about sibling rivalry and parental favoritism, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt like the forgotten child in your family, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Hit that like button if you're ready for a story about karma finally catching up, and don't forget to subscribe because trust me, the way this unfolds will leave you absolutely speechless. This isn't just about money, it's about 30 years of lies finally coming to light. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, our house looked like something from a magazine: white picket fence, manicured lawn, and the perfect family image that my parents Robert and Linda Mitchell desperately wanted to maintain. But inside those pristine walls there was an unspoken rule that I learned early: Jake was the sun, and the rest of us were just planets orbiting around his brilliance. From the moment Jake could walk, everything revolved around him. When he was 8 and I was 11, he decided he wanted to play piano. Within a week, a baby grand Steinway appeared in our living room, costing more than most people's cars. When I had begged for guitar lessons the year before, my parents told me we couldn't afford the $50 monthly fee. But Jake got private piano instruction with a Juilliard graduate who charged $200 per session. The pattern was so consistent it became predictable. Jake wanted to play soccer. He got enrolled in the most expensive club team in the state, complete with personal training sessions and designer cleats. I tried out for the school volleyball team and was told I'd have to find my own way to practices because driving me around wasn't convenient. When Jake lost interest in soccer after one season, nobody mentioned the thousands of dollars that had been wasted. When I couldn't afford the team fee for volleyball, I was lectured about commitment and following through. High school made the disparity even more obvious. Jake's 16th birthday was a celebration that lasted a week. First came the surprise party with his entire class, catered by the fanciest restaurant in town. Then came the main event: a brand new BMW 3 Series sitting in our driveway with a giant red bow. I remember standing at my bedroom window, watching him jump up and down with excitement while our parents beamed with pride. When my 16th birthday came around 2 years later, I got a used Honda Civic that barely ran and a lecture about being grateful for what I had. The car broke down 3 times in the first month, and each time I had to figure out how to get it fixed with money from my part-time job at the local diner. Jake's BMW got detailed every month and was replaced with a newer model when he went to college. College selection was perhaps the most painful example of the double standard. Jake's senior year was filled with college counselors, SAT prep courses, and campus visits to every Ivy League school on the East Coast. Our parents hired a private consultant who charged $5,000 to help craft his application essays. They flew to interviews with him, turning each college visit into a mini vacation. When my time came, I was handed a stack of community college brochures and told that was the most practical option for our family's budget. "We've already invested so much in Jake's education," my mother explained, not even looking up from her magazine. "We need to be more realistic about our financial situation now." I worked 30 hours a week at the diner throughout my senior year, saving every penny I could for tuition. My guidance counselor helped me apply for scholarships, and I managed to cobble together enough funding to attend the local state university. But even that small victory was overshadowed by Jake's acceptance to Harvard, which prompted a celebration dinner at the country club that cost more than my entire first semester's tuition. The financial support didn't end with tuition. Jake got a generous monthly allowance that covered his rent in Cambridge, his meal plan, his textbooks, and his social activities. When he called home complaining about needing new clothes or wanting to take a spring break trip to Cancun, money was wired to his account within hours. Meanwhile, I was rationing ramen noodles and walking to campus in worn-out shoes because I couldn't afford both textbooks and bus fare. When I called home asking for help with a medical bill after a minor accident, I was told that I needed to learn to manage my own finances. "This is good for you, Sarah," my father said. "It's building character." Jake changed majors 3 times during college, extending his graduation by 2 years. Each change required new textbooks, different course loads, and additional semesters of tuition. Our parents paid for everything without question, even hiring tutors when his grades started slipping due to too much partying. When I struggled with organic chemistry and asked if they could help pay for a tutor, I was told that I should study harder and visit my professor's office hours instead. After graduation, Jake moved back home while he figured things out. This period lasted 3 years and included 2 failed startup attempts, both funded entirely by our parents. The first was some kind of social media app that never made it past the development stage, burning through $80,000 in the process. The second was a food truck business that folded after 6 months when Jake decided that working early mornings wasn't for him. During this same period, I was working 60-hour weeks as a junior accountant, living in a studio apartment that I could barely afford and paying off my student loans. I had graduated summa cum laude with a degree in finance and was slowly building my career from the ground up, but my achievements were barely acknowledged at family dinners where the conversation always centered on Jake's next big idea or his latest girlfriend. The favoritism was so ingrained in our family dynamic that I had stopped questioning it. This was just how things were. Jake was the golden child, and I was the responsible one who didn't need help. I told myself that their investment in him would pay off eventually, that his success would benefit the whole family. I convinced myself that their love was just expressed differently, that providing for him was their way of showing care, but deep down a part of me was keeping score. Every missed birthday dinner because they were at Jake's college events, every family vacation I couldn't afford to join, every time my accomplishments were brushed aside to discuss his potential, it all added up to a growing precision's time. Resentment that I tried desperately to suppress. After all, we were family, and family meant unconditional love and support, right? What my family didn't know was that their neglect had inadvertently created something extraordinary. While they were busy funding Jake's dreams, I was quietly building my own empire from the shadows of their indifference. The skills I developed from having to fend for myself, combined with the financial education I was absorbing at work, were setting the foundation for something they could never have imagined. My entry into serious investing started almost by accident. During my second year as a junior accountant at Morrison & Associates, I was assigned to work on the books for several high-net-worth clients. One of them was Margaret Chen, a 70-year-old woman who had built a fortune through strategic real estate investments and stock market trading. While organizing her portfolios, I became fascinated by her investment strategies. Margaret noticed my interest and began sharing small pieces of wisdom during our monthly meetings. "Most people think investing is gambling," she told me one afternoon as we reviewed her quarterly reports. "But it's actually about patience, research, and understanding that money works harder than people do." She lent me books on value investing, taught me how to read company financial statements beyond the basic accounting I knew, and most importantly showed me how compound interest could turn small amounts into substantial wealth over time. I started with just $50 a month, literally every spare penny I had after rent, food, and loan payments. My first investment was in a small-cap technology company that Margaret had mentioned was undervalued. I spent weeks researching the company, reading every quarterly report, analyzing their debt-to-equity ratio, and understanding their market position. When I finally bought my first 10 shares, my hands were shaking as I clicked the purchase button. That first investment gained 18% in 6 months. But more importantly, it taught me that I had an intuitive understanding of market patterns and company analysis. I reinvested the gains and continued adding my monthly $50 contributions. While Jake was blowing through thousands of our parents' money on his failed social media app, I was quietly building a diversified portfolio that was growing steadily. The real turning point came when I discovered cryptocurrency in its early days. This was 2011, when Bitcoin was still under $1, and most people dismissed it as internet monopoly money. But my background in finance made me understand the underlying blockchain technology and its potential to disrupt traditional banking systems. I used a small inheritance from my grandmother, $2,000 that my parents didn't even know about, to buy my first substantial cryptocurrency position. By day, I was still the overlooked daughter working long hours at my accounting job. But by night, I was studying market trends, analyzing emerging technologies, and making calculated investment decisions. I taught myself about options trading, learned to read technical charts, and developed a systematic approach to portfolio management that was yielding returns that seemed almost impossible. The cryptocurrency investment alone grew from $2,000 to over $300,000 within 2 years. But instead of celebrating or telling anyone, I quietly diversified into traditional stocks, real estate investment trusts, and even started a small side business providing bookkeeping services to local restaurants. My frugal lifestyle born from necessity became a strategic advantage. While my peers were upgrading their apartments and buying new cars, I was living below my means and investing the difference. I still drove the same used Honda Civic from high school, still lived in my tiny studio apartment, and still shopped for groceries with coupons. To my family, I looked like the struggling younger daughter they expected me to be. The bookkeeping side business started bringing in an extra $1,000 a month, all of which went straight into investments. I was working 7 days a week, but I loved every minute of it. Each client taught me something new about different industries, giving me insights that informed my investment decisions. When I helped a restaurant owner optimize their supply chain costs, I invested in the food distribution company they switched to. When I saw how much small businesses were spending on cloud computing services, I bought shares in the companies providing those services. By 2015, my portfolio had crossed the $1 million mark. I was 27 years old, still driving my beat-up Honda, still living in the same studio apartment, and still being treated like the family failure at Sunday dinners. Meanwhile, Jake had moved back home after his food truck business failed, and our parents had started talking about helping him with a down payment on a house. The irony wasn't lost on me that they were worried about Jake's financial security while I was sitting on more money than they had probably saved in their entire lives. But I kept quiet, continued my modest lifestyle, and kept investing. Every family gathering where they discussed Jake's financial needs became fuel for my determination to prove that their investment strategy had been completely backwards. I started taking bigger, calculated risks, leveraging my growing capital to invest in emerging markets and private equity opportunities. My network was expanding too. Clients from my bookkeeping business were introducing me to other investors, and I was learning about investment opportunities that weren't available to the general public. The real estate market crash of 2008 had actually been a massive opportunity for me. While everyone else was panicking, I had been buying discounted properties and REITs. By 2018, those investments had tripled in value. My cryptocurrency holdings, which I had continued to accumulate during market downturns, were worth millions. But perhaps the most satisfying investment was in a small tech startup that developed financial planning software for small businesses. I had met the founder through one of my bookkeeping clients, and their product solved real problems I witnessed daily in my work. My $50,000 investment had grown to over $2 million when the company was acquired by a major financial services firm. Each success reinforced my confidence and taught me new lessons about wealth building. I learned to separate emotion from investment decisions, to diversify across different asset classes, and to always keep a long-term perspective. The same qualities that made me the responsible daughter, patience, attention to detail, conservative planning, turned out to be exactly what made me a successful investor. By my 30th birthday, my net worth had reached $15 million. I celebrated alone in my still modest apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and reviewing my portfolio performance. That same week, I attended a family dinner where my parents announced they were giving Jake another loan to start his third business venture, something involving drop shipping products from China. I sat there listening to them worry about their retirement savings being depleted by Jake's endless financial needs, knowing that I had more money in my checking account than they had in their 401k. The temptation to reveal my success was almost overwhelming, but something held me back. Maybe it was the fear that they would suddenly start treating me differently, or maybe I just wasn't ready to change the family dynamic that had motivated me for so long. Looking back now, I think part of me was waiting for the right moment, the moment when their favoritism would finally backfire in a way that taught them a lesson. I just had no idea how dramatic that moment would be, or how much it would reveal about the people I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. The conversation that shattered my world happened on a rainy Thursday evening in March. I had stopped by my parents' house to drop off some tax documents I had helped them prepare. One of the many ways I still tried to earn their approval through useful gestures they barely acknowledged. Jake was there for his weekly dinner, a tradition that had somehow become sacred while my visits were treated as drop-in conveniences. I sat there listening to them worry about their retirement savings being depleted by Jake's endless financial needs, knowing that I had more money in my checking account than they had in their 401k. The temptation to reveal my success was almost overwhelming, but something held me back. Maybe it was the fear that they would suddenly start treating me differently, or maybe I just wasn't ready to change the family dynamic that had motivated me for so long. Looking back now, I think part of me was waiting for the right moment, the moment when their favoritism would finally backfire in a way that taught them a lesson. I just had no idea how dramatic that moment would be, or how much it would reveal about the people I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. Jake exploded into a rage that brought our parents running from the living room. He started screaming about how unfair it was, how I had been hiding money while watching him struggle, how I was a selfish lying bitch who had betrayed the family. She's been sitting on millions. While Mom and Dad worried about my business loans, he shouted, pacing around the kitchen like a caged animal. She watched me fail over and over when she could have helped. I was about to leave when my phone rang with a call from my financial advisor, David Morrison. Ironically, the son of my former boss, who had become one of the most respected wealth managers in the state. I stepped into the kitchen to take the call, thinking it would be a quick check-in about some portfolio adjustments we had discussed. "Sarah, I wanted to give you the update on the Pemberton Industries acquisition," David said, his voice carrying the excitement of good news. "Your position just cleared $28 million. We should probably schedule a meeting to discuss diversification strategies at this level." I nearly dropped the phone. While I knew my portfolio had been performing exceptionally well, hearing the exact number spoken out loud made it real in a way that seeing it on statements never had. $28 million. The call ended, and I turned around to find Jake staring at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't surprise or curiosity, it was pure undiluted fury. His face was red, his hands were clenched into fists, and for a moment I actually felt afraid of my own brother. $28 million, he said, his voice barely controlled. "Did I just hear you talking about $28 million? My mind raced through possible explanations or deflections, but something about his tone made me defensive instead of apologetic. After 30 years of hiding, minimizing myself, and watching him receive everything while I got nothing, I was tired of making myself smaller for his comfort. "Yes," I said, simply meeting his glare with steady eyes. "I've been investing for years." What happened next was like watching a dam break. "What kind of sister does that?" My parents stood in the doorway looking confused and shell-shocked. My mother kept asking what was happening while my father demanded to know if what Jake was saying was true. "It's my money," I said, my voice getting stronger with each word. "Money I earned and invested myself, with no help from anyone in this family. I was worth more than most people would earn in multiple lifetimes, and I was standing in my parents' kitchen wearing a 5-year-old sweater and driving a car that needed duct tape to hold the muffler in place." That's incredible, David," I managed to whisper, stepping closer to the window and lowering my voice. "Yes, let's definitely schedule something next week." "But why should they give me their retirement money when you've been hoarding millions like some kind of dragon?" The word hoarding hit me like a physical blow. Here was my brother, who had been given every advantage, every opportunity, every dollar he had ever asked for, accusing me of hoarding money that I had earned through years of sacrifice and smart decisions. "I didn't hoard anything," I said, my voice now carrying 30 years of suppressed anger. "I built something from nothing while you were handed everything and squandered it all. This money represents every night I worked late, every weekend I spent studying investments instead of partying, every sacrifice I made while you lived off our parents' generosity." My parents were starting to understand the scope of what was being revealed. My mother sank into a kitchen chair, looking pale and confused. "Sarah, honey, if you have that much money, why didn't you tell us? We've been so worried about retirement, about Jake's future." And there it was, the assumption that had been lurking beneath the surface of our family dynamic for decades. Even now, learning that I was worth more than they had ever imagined, their first thought wasn't pride in my achievement or curiosity about how I had accomplished it. It was about how my success could solve Jake's problems. Watching my brother's face when he learned about my success taught me something crucial about family dynamics and entitlement. If you're still with me on this wild ride, we're just getting to the part where years of buried resentment finally explode into the open. The way my family reacted to my financial success revealed truths that I never could have imagined, and I promise you what happens next will completely change how you think about blood loyalty and parental favoritism. Don't click away now. The real drama is just beginning, and trust me, the karma that's about to unfold is absolutely devastating. Jake wasn't done. If anything, my defense had made him angrier. He started listing all the times he had struggled while I apparently had millions sitting in accounts. The failed social media app, the food truck disaster, his current unemployment, all of it was now my fault for not bankrolling his dreams. "You could have been my business partner," he said, his voice taking on a manipulative tone that I recognized from childhood. "We could have built something together. But instead, you let me fail while you got rich in secret." That's not what family does, Sarah. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to point out the obvious, that Jake had never once asked for my help, had never shown any interest in my financial knowledge or business acumen, had never treated me as anything other than his less successful older sister who was barely worth acknowledging. But they said nothing. The silence stretched uncomfortably until my father finally spoke. "Sarah, I think what Jake is trying to say is that families should support each other. If you've been blessed with this kind of success, maybe it's time to think about how that blessing could help the whole family." Blessed. As if my wealth had fallen from the sky instead of being built through years of discipline, education, and calculated risks. As if the struggles that created my success were somehow less valid than Jake's failures that had created his need. In that moment, standing in my childhood kitchen, I realized that nothing had really changed. I was still the daughter whose achievements were diminished, whose success was seen as a resource to be shared rather than an accomplishment to be celebrated. The only difference was that now the stakes were higher and the expectations were bigger. But something else was becoming clear too. Something in the way my parents were looking at each other, the quick glances and uncomfortable shifts that suggested they knew more about this situation than they were letting on. The pieces of a larger puzzle were starting to align, and I was beginning to suspect that my brother's rage wasn't just about entitlement. There was something else going on, something that would soon make this family dinner the night that changed everything forever. The next week, my parents called a family meeting to discuss what they termed Sarah's situation. The formal tone of the invitation should have been my first warning that this wasn't going to be the heart-to-heart conversation I naively hoped it might be. I arrived at their house on Sunday afternoon to find Jake already there, sitting at the dining room table with a stack of papers in front of him and an expression that looked suspiciously like smugness. My parents had prepared what could only be described as a presentation. My father, who had worked in corporate management his entire career, had apparently decided to treat my personal finances like a business problem that needed solving. He started by outlining what he called the family's financial ecosystem, and how my recent windfall could be strategically deployed to benefit everyone. The language alone made my skin crawl, but I listened as he explained their vision. Jake would finally get the capital he needed to start his real estate investment company. They suggested $2 million as a modest beginning fund. My parents wanted to accelerate their retirement plans and maybe buy the vacation home in Florida they had always dreamed about. Another $1 million would set them up comfortably. There was even a line item for charitable donations that would benefit the family's tax situation. "Think of it as family investment banking," my mother added, trying to sound businesslike but failing to hide her excitement. "You'd be like our family's CFO, helping everyone achieve their dreams." Jake had been uncharacteristically quiet during their presentation, but now he leaned forward with his own folder of documents. "I've actually put together a real business plan this time, Sarah. Not like the other ventures. This is solid, researched, professional. Look at these market projections." He slid a bound document across the table that was clearly professionally prepared. The cover read, "Mitchell Family Real Estate Ventures, a comprehensive investment opportunity." Inside were glossy photos of properties, detailed financial projections, and market analysis that must have cost thousands of dollars to produce. "Where did you get the money for this?" I asked, flipping through pages of data that looked legitimate and expensive. "Mom and Dad helped with the initial research costs," Jake said, not quite meeting my eyes. "But Sarah, this is different. This isn't some pipe dream. I've spent months studying the market, talking to real estate professionals, learning from my past mistakes. I had to admit the presentation was impressive." The business plan addressed residential flipping, commercial property development, and rental property management. The financial projections showed modest but steady growth, and the market analysis seemed thorough and realistic. For the first time in his life, Jake appeared to have done actual work before asking for money. But something felt off. The writing style was too polished, too professional for someone who had never successfully completed a business venture. When I looked more closely at the financial models, they showed a level of sophistication that seemed beyond Jake's demonstrated abilities. "Did you write this yourself?" I asked. "I had some help with the formatting and research," Jake admitted. "But the vision, the strategy, that's all mine. Sarah, I know I've made mistakes before, but I've learned from them. I'm not asking for a handout, I'm offering you a partnership opportunity." My parents were nodding enthusiastically, clearly having been won over by the professional presentation and Jake's newfound maturity. But I was thinking about all the times Jake had promised he'd learned from his mistakes, all the passionate pitches for previous ventures that had seemed equally compelling in the moment. "How much research did this cost?" I asked. "About $15,000, my father answered, but we considered it an investment in Jake's education and professional development." $15,000 for research on a business plan designed to convince me to invest millions. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had spent more on this pitch than they had ever offered to contribute to my education or career development. "I need time to think about this," I said, which clearly wasn't the answer they were expecting. Jake's composure cracked slightly. "What's there to think about? You have more money than you could spend in a lifetime, and I'm offering you a legitimate business opportunity. This isn't charity, it's family helping family achieve mutual success." "Jake's right," my mother chimed in. "Sarah, honey, money is supposed to bring families together, not drive them apart. We raised you both to take care of each other." That statement hung in the air like a challenge. We all knew it wasn't true. They had raised Jake to expect support and me to provide it, but they had never framed it quite so explicitly before. "I've been taking care of myself for 15 years, I said quietly. "Building this wealth required sacrifices that none of you understood or supported at the time. Now you want me to hand over millions because it would be convenient for everyone else's dreams." "That's not fair," Jake snapped, his professional veneer slipping. "You're making it sound like we're trying to rob you. I'm offering you a business partnership with real returns on investment. What happens if this venture fails like the others?" "It won't fail," Jake said, but there was something desperate in his voice now. "I've learned from my mistakes. I'm ready for this." "And if it does fail?" I pressed. "What then?" The question seemed to catch everyone off guard. They exchanged glances that confirmed what I was starting to suspect. This wasn't really about a business partnership at all. This was about wealth redistribution, plain and simple. They wanted me to subsidize the lifestyle and dreams that they felt Jake deserved regardless of the business outcomes. "Sarah," my father said in his most authoritative voice, "sometimes family means taking risks for each other. Your mother and I took plenty of risks investing in Jake's future and your education. Now it's your turn to invest in the family's collective success." I almost laughed at the comparison. Their investment in my education had been minimal and grudging, while their investment in Jake had been enthusiastic and ongoing. But more importantly, they were asking me to risk money I had earned through careful planning and disciplined decision-making on ventures that had a track record of failure. "I need to see some additional information before I can make any decisions," I said. "Jake, I want to meet with your advisors, see the detailed financial models, understand exactly how this business would operate day to day." Jake's face went pale. "What advisors?" I consulted with some people, but they're not officially advisors or anything. The people who helped you prepare this presentation. I want to talk to them directly." The room went quiet. My parents were looking at Jake with expressions I couldn't quite read, and Jake was staring at the table like he wanted to disappear into it. Actually, my mother said slowly maybe we should tell Sarah about the other situation. What other situation, I asked, but something cold was starting to form in my stomach. Jake looked up at me with an expression that was part guilt and part defiance. I might have already made some commitments based on the assumption that you'd want to help family. What kind of commitments? I put down deposits on a few properties, he said quietly. Good deals that wouldn't wait for a lengthy decision process. But they're refundable if we decide not to move forward. How much in deposits? 50,000, he said, not meeting my eyes. Where did you get $50,000 for deposits? This time it was my father who answered. We liquidated some of our retirement savings to help Jake secure the opportunities. We figured once you came on board as a partner it would all work out. I stared at them, trying to process what I was hearing. They had already spent their own retirement money based on the assumption that I would agree to fund Jake's latest venture. They had made financial decisions that put their security at risk, because they were so confident that my wealth belonged to the family. So this isn't really a presentation about a potential business partnership, I said slowly. This is you telling me that you've already committed our money and now I need to make it good. It's not like that, Jake protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Then what is it like? It's like family taking care of family, my mother said, but there was something brittle in her voice now. It's like understanding that individual success means nothing if it doesn't lift up the people you love. I looked around the table at the three people who had shaped my entire life, and for the first time I saw them clearly. Not as the parents who had made difficult choices about resource allocation, not as the brother who had been given advantages that hadn't quite worked out, but as people who fundamentally believed that my success was their entitlement. We liquidated some of our retirement savings to help Jake secure the opportunities. We figured once you came on board as a partner it would all work out. I stared at them, trying to process what I was hearing. They had already spent their own retirement money based on the assumption that I would agree to fund Jake's latest venture. They had made financial decisions that put their security at risk, because they were so confident that my wealth belonged to the family. I think I need to go home and think about all of this, I said, standing up from the table. Sarah, wait, Jake said, jumping up after me. Don't make this weird. We're family. This is what families do. They support each other's dreams and build wealth together. You can't just hoard money while the people who love you struggle. That word again, hoard. The expensive business plan researched the confident assumption that I would agree to their proposal. The way they seemed to have planned this entire approach so carefully, it all suggested a level of coordination that felt calculated in a way that went beyond simple family dynamics. As I pulled into my apartment complex, my phone rang. It was my Uncle Tom, my father's younger brother, who lived in California and rarely called except for holidays. But what he told me that night would finally reveal the truth about my family that I had been blind to for 32 years. Sarah, honey, I wasn't sure if I should call you about this, but Linda posted something on Facebook that's been bothering me for weeks. Uncle Tom's voice carried a concern that immediately put me on high alert. My mother wasn't particularly active on social media, so anything noteworthy enough to prompt a cross-country phone call was significant. She posted about Jake's new business venture and how excited the family is about this incredible investment opportunity that's going to change everyone's life. She mentioned that your FaceTime's Fadianton Manis involved as the primary investor, and she's been responding to comments like, "It's already a done deal." My stomach dropped. Tom, I haven't agreed to invest in anything. In fact, I just found out about their business plan today. There was a long pause. Sarah, she's been posting about this for almost a month. She's told everyone in the family about your success and Jake's venture. Aunt Margaret has been calling to congratulate me on our family's good fortune. Even your grandmother thinks you and Jake are already business partners. I sank onto my couch, trying to process this information. While I had been living my quiet life, maintaining my modest appearance, and keeping my success private, my mother had been broadcasting a fictional version of events to our entire extended family. There's more, Tom continued hesitantly. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but your father called me 3 weeks ago asking about real estate investment strategies. He wanted to know about property flipping and rental management. When I asked why he was suddenly interested in real estate, he said, "You and Jake were starting a family investment company and he wanted to understand the business better." 3 weeks ago, I asked, my mind racing. "Tom, they presented this business plan to me today as if Jake had just developed it." "Honey, I hate to say this about my own brother, but I think they've been planning this approach for a while. Your dad asked very specific questions about how to present real estate investments to potential partners, what kind of documentation investors expect to see, how to make projections look attractive but realistic." The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. The professional presentation, the confident assumption that I would agree to invest the deposits Jake had already made. None of this had been spontaneous. This had been a coordinated campaign designed to manipulate me into funding their dreams. "Tom, did my dad tell you how much money I have?" "He mentioned that you'd been very successful with investments, and that you were in a position to be the primary financial backer for Jake's venture. He didn't give me specific numbers, but he implied it was substantial." "Sarah, I got the impression that they've been discussing this plan for months." I felt sick. While I had been struggling with whether to reveal my financial success to my family, they had already been making plans for how to spend it. My private achievements had somehow become public knowledge and family strategy without my consent or even my awareness. "There's something else," Tom said, his voice even more hesitant now. "I ran into your cousin Michael at a conference last month. He mentioned that your parents have been telling people that you're supporting Jake's business ventures, and that it's been a great example of family cooperation." "Sarah, they've been representing this as an ongoing partnership for weeks." "That's impossible," I said, but even as the words came out, I knew it wasn't impossible at all. It was exactly the kind of thing my family would do: create a reality that served their needs, and then pressure me to conform to it. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this," Tom continued, "but Michael also mentioned that your parents have been talking about their upcoming retirement plans. Apparently, they've been telling people that your success has given them the financial security to retire early and buy that vacation home they've always wanted." The vacation home. While I had been struggling with whether to reveal my financial success to my family, they had already been making plans for how to spend it. My private achievements had somehow become public knowledge and family strategy without my consent or even my awareness. "There's something else," Tom said, his voice even more hesitant now. "I ran into your cousin Michael at a conference last month. He mentioned that your parents have been telling people that you're supporting Jake's business ventures, and that it's been a great example of family cooperation." "Sarah, they've been representing this as an ongoing partnership for weeks." "That's impossible," I said, but even as the words came out, I knew it wasn't impossible at all. It was exactly the kind of thing my family would do: create a reality that served their needs, and then pressure me to conform to it. The exact same requests they had made during today's family meeting, presented as if it were a new idea rather than a plan they had been discussing with extended family for weeks. My phone was buzzing with a text message. I glanced at the screen and saw it was from my cousin Jennifer. "So excited to hear about your business partnership with Jake. Mom says you guys are going to make millions together. Can't wait to see you at Christmas and hear all about it." I showed Tom the message. If I refused to participate now, I wouldn't just be disappointing my immediate family. I would be humiliating them in front of everyone they knew. "Tom, do you think they know exactly how much money I have?" "I don't know, but your dad's questions were very specific. He asked about investment amounts that would be substantial enough to fund major real estate projects. When I mentioned that serious property development usually requires millions in capital, he didn't seem surprised." "Sarah," Tom said gently, "have you considered that someone might have access to information about your finances?" The thought had occurred to me, but I had dismissed it as paranoid. Now, though, I was remembering small details that hadn't seemed significant at the time. My mother asking casual questions about my investment hobby. My father's sudden interest in my work as a bookkeeper, and whether it was lucrative. Jake's comments about me being secretive about money. "I need to make some phone calls," I told Tom. "Thank you for telling me this. I know it wasn't easy." "Sarah, whatever you decide to do, just remember that family is supposed to support each other, not exploit each other. What they're doing isn't fair to you, and you don't owe them your financial security just because you've been successful." After hanging up with Tom, I sat in my apartment thinking about the elaborate deception that had been unfolding around me. My family hadn't just been planning to ask for money, they had been actively working to create circumstances that would make it impossible for me to say no. But how had they learned about my wealth in the first place? I needed to find out because something told me that the answer to that question would reveal just how deep this conspiracy went, and how long they had been planning to take advantage of my success. The truth, when I finally uncovered it, would be more shocking than anything I had imagined. The next morning, I called David Morrison and asked him to audit my account access records. What he found made my blood run cold. For the past 6 months, someone had been logging into my investment account, using my credentials, reviewing my portfolio, and downloading statements. The IP address traced back to my parents' house. "Sarah, this is serious," David said during our emergency meeting. "Someone has been systematically monitoring your financial information. Do you have any idea how they could have gotten your login credentials?" I thought back to Christmas dinner 6 months ago when I had briefly checked my account balance on my phone while sitting at my parents' kitchen table. Jake had been right next to me, and I remembered him making a joke about me always working even on Christmas. I had laughed it off, not realizing he might have been watching me enter my passwords. "I need you to change all my access credentials immediately," I told David. "And I want a complete record of every time my account has been accessed from that IP address." The records showed a pattern of surveillance that was breathtaking in its scope. Jake had been logging in weekly, sometimes daily, tracking my portfolio's performance, downloading my statements, and even researching the companies I had invested in. Jake hadn't developed a sudden interest in real estate investing. He had been working with a business consultant for 3 months, using detailed knowledge of my portfolio to craft a business plan specifically designed to appeal to my style investment preferences. The consultant, a man named Richard Hayes, had been paid $25,000 to create the professional presentation Jake had shown me. My family hadn't just been planning to ask for money, they had been actively working to create circumstances that would make it impossible for me to say no. But how had they learned about my wealth in the first place? I needed to find out because something told me that the answer to that question would reveal just how deep this conspiracy went, and how long they had been planning to take advantage of my success. Hayes specialized in family wealth integration strategies, essentially helping family members extract money from wealthy relatives by creating compelling investment opportunities. But the most shocking discovery was a series of emails between my parents and Hayes discussing what they called Sarah's psychological profile and the best ways to approach me for funding. He hadn't just discovered my wealth accidentally. He had been monitoring it for months, watching it grow and planning how to access it. Armed with this information, I hired a private investigator to look deeper into my family's recent activities. What she uncovered was a conspiracy that went far beyond anything I had suspected. Another email from my father discussed my guilt triggers, noting that I had always felt responsible for family harmony and might be motivated by the opportunity to finally contribute meaningfully to family success. They had weaponized my personality traits and insecurities to manipulate me into funding their dreams. The whole thing had been a calculated psychological operation designed to part me from millions of dollars. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated just how successful I had become, and how much I had learned about protecting wealth. My years of studying investments had also taught me about legal protection strategies, and I knew exactly how to respond to financial manipulation. I scheduled another family meeting, but this time I came prepared with my own presentation. When I walked into my parents' dining room, I found Jake and my parents seated around the table with expectant expressions, clearly believing that I was ready to agree to their investment proposal. I've had a chance to review Jake's business plan thoroughly. I began setting down my own folder of documents, and I've done some additional research into the investment opportunity. "That's wonderful," my mother exclaimed. "We knew that once you really looked at the numbers, you'd see what an amazing opportunity this is." "I did see something amazing," I agreed, "but it wasn't the real estate projections." I opened my folder and began laying out printed copies of the account access records, the emails with Richard Hayes, and the private investigator's findings. I watched their faces change as they realized what they were looking at. "For 6 months Jake has been illegally accessing my private financial accounts," I said calmly. "He's been monitoring my portfolio, downloading my statements, and using that information to craft a business proposal specifically designed to manipulate me into investing millions of dollars in his latest venture. Jake's face went white, but he tried to bluster through. I was just trying to understand your investment style so I could present opportunities that would interest you. You committed computer fraud, I said simply. You violated my privacy, accessed my confidential financial information without permission, and used that information to orchestrate an elaborate deception involving our entire family. My parents were looking back and forth between the documents, and Jake's face clearly trying to understand how their plan had gone so wrong. And you, I continued, turning to my parents, hired a consultant to develop psychological manipulation strategies to extract money from your own daughter. You've been lying to our extended family for months, creating fictional narratives about business partnerships that don't exist, and putting financial pressure on me by making commitments with my money without my knowledge or consent. Sarah, honey, you're making this sound so much worse than it is, my mother said desperately. We're family. We were just trying to find a way for all of us to benefit from your success. No, I said firmly. You were trying to find a way for all of you to benefit from my success while contributing nothing yourselves. This isn't family cooperation, this is financial exploitation. Jake finally exploded. So, what are you going to do? Call the police on your own family? Turn your back on us after everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Jake, you've never done anything for me. You've taken everything our parents had to offer and then demanded more. You've failed at every opportunity you've been given, and now you want to use my success to subsidize your next failure. I deserve a chance at success too, he shouted. Just because you got lucky with some investments doesn't mean you're better than me. I didn't get lucky, I said. I worked 60-hour weeks for 15 years while you lived off our parents' generosity. I studied and planned and sacrificed while you partied and failed and asked for more money. I built wealth through discipline and intelligence while you built debt through entitlement and poor decisions. I stood up and began gathering my documents. Here's what's going to happen. Jake, you're going to return the deposits you made with Mom and Dad's retirement money, all of them, and you're never going to access my financial information again. And if I don't, Jake asked defiantly, then I press charges for computer fraud and identity theft and I sue you for damages. I have enough evidence to put you in prison, and enough money to make sure you never recover financially. The room went silent. My parents looked devastated, Jake looked defeated, and I felt free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn their approval or minimize their disappointment. I was simply protecting myself and my achievements from people who saw them as resources to be exploited. Sarah, my father said quietly, what about family? What about taking care of each other? Dad, I've been taking care of myself since I was 18 years old. You taught me that independence was a virtue, that hard work was its own reward, and that success comes to those who earn it. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life tales about family dynamics, financial independence, and the sometimes painful process of setting boundaries with the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. And please share this video. There are probably people in your life who need to hear that it's okay to protect your success from family members who see it as their salvation fund. My parents apologized and began seeing a family counselor to understand how their favoritism had damaged our relationships. Richard Hayes lost his consulting license after I reported his manipulation tactics to the state attorney general. And me, I kept investing, kept building wealth, and kept living below my means. But now I also started a scholarship program for first-generation college students who were working their way through school. Every semester, I fund 20 students who remind me of myself. Young people who understand that success is built through discipline, sacrifice, and refusing to accept that someone else's dreams matter more than your own. The money I didn't give to Jake's real estate venture, I invested it in index funds and rental properties that have grown my net worth to over $40 million. Every quarter when I review my portfolio performance, I think about the family meeting where they tried to convince me that individual success means nothing without lifting up the people you love. They were wrong. Individual success means everything when it's built on your own merit, protected from those who would exploit it, and used to create opportunities for people who truly deserve them. That's the kind of family legacy worth building, one based on achievement, integrity, and justice, rather than manipulation, entitlement, and exploitation. So, let me ask you, have you ever had to stand up to family members who felt entitled to the fruits of your hard work? How do you handle relatives who see your success as their opportunity? Share your stories in the comments below, because I know I'm not the only one who's had to learn the hard way that blood doesn't automatically equal loyalty. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life tales about family dynamics, financial independence, and the sometimes painful process of setting boundaries with the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. And please share this video. There are probably people in your life who need to hear that it's okay to protect your success from family members who see it as their salvation fund. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, true family celebrates your achievements without trying to claim ownership of them. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your relatives is teaching them that entitlement doesn't equal love and boundaries don't equal betrayal.